Chester did mention that we need to have a closed session. Are we expected to have action following the closed session?
Yes, the purpose of the closed session would be to preserve the attorney-client privilege, and I do anticipate brief action afterwards.
Okay.
Motion to go to closed session, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion?
Short closed session, Mr.
By Shields. All in favor? Aye. All right, everybody in here? Call the meeting back to order. And I'm going to basically just turn it over to our County Attorney, Mr. Jones. Chester?
Gentlemen, as y'all are aware, there has been a Fair Labor Standards Act and North Carolina Wage and Hour Act claim made against the county and the sheriff. That's maybe the bad news. The good news is it appears that we're close to having it resolved. For the benefit of public session, for the benefit of making any decision in connection with this, former Deputy Craig Stahl made a claim against Macon County and Macon County Sheriff for unpaid wages allegedly owed for hours worked and or overtime pay. And Deputy Stahl was a canine handler for Macon County's sheriff, and his claim involved after work hours in caring for the dog that he was responsible for. Those after hour works included times where the dog needed to be fed, taken out to do what dogs have to be taken out for, and just general care when Mr. Stahl was not on the regular clock. As you probably all know, the canine officers take their dogs home, and those dogs reside with them, and so those dogs have needs outside of regular working hours. Long and short of it, though, when Mr. Stahl made his claim known to the sheriff became very proactive with that claim, and the sheriff immediately contacted me, and as a result, he, myself, and the county manager looked into the claim and evaluated the claim. Indeed, the sheriff, county manager, and I also consulted with an expert personnel attorney regarding the matter to get a second opinion on the evaluation. It was determined that the claim should be settled if reasonably possible, and upon learning of this issue, I want you to know that the sheriff immediately took steps to not just formulate, but implement a department policy designed to address the situation which led to this claim, i.e. making sure that officers that were canine handlers got paid for the time they had to work with their dogs at home, take them out, feed them, etc. The sheriff, as I've indicated, has been very proactive in addressing the problem, which resulted in this claim, and the county has been negotiating this claim with the attorney for Mr. Stahl. I'm very pleased to present to this board that the parties, Macon County Sheriff, and Mr. Stahl appear to be pretty close to reaching an amicable settlement of this so that litigation will not be necessary on this matter. I have provided each of you with a proposed, a copy of a proposed general release of claims, which would effectively resolve the claim that's been made by Mr. Craig Stahl. Mr. Stahl, through his attorney, have indicated that they would be willing to take back wages in the amount of $41,962.68. Now, you need to understand that's the wages, the gross wage that he would be paid. But you need to understand the cost to the county is a little bit higher because the county has to pay the regular FICA, the regular Medicare, in connection with any other wages that they would pay. They would have to pay those things. They also have to pay the 401k contribution and then the retirement contribution that they would normally have to pay on those wages. Those numbers bring the grand total of the payout of roughly $50,733, but the gross wage that would be paid to Mr. Stahl would be $41,962.68. Now his sum also has withholding, so that's not the net amount that he would end up with. He's got to pay taxes out of that as well, his share of the FICA, if you're following the standard withholding, if you will. So if the board is inclined to adopt this settlement as set forth in the general release of claims, a copy of which that I provided to each of you, then we'd need a motion to approve it, and then we would need the board to in fact vote and approve it. You do need to understand these documents have been already signed by Mr. Stahl. He has indicated willingness to settle it on these amicable terms.
Mr. Jones, can we ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
The board members may have them. Mr. Stahl is obviously going to have some, I would think, very considerable attorney's fees associated with this. We're not paying anything on top of this amount for that, and he'll be responsible out of that amount that we would potentially be settling him.
Yeah, I think
pay his attorney out of that.
I think it's very important to observe that this agreement does not pay him money and then also pay attorney's fees. But one thing this agreement does accomplish for the county is by avoiding litigation on this claim, we potentially avoid having to pay his attorney's fees, which would be recoverable in that type of litigation.
Okay.
Other questions of the board?
Yes, I have one. Could you clarify, you used the term, the word double. Can you give us a hypothetical thing? When we use the double, we went to court?
Yeah.
Okay.
In a Fair Labor Standards Act case, if, for example, it was determined by the court that Mr. Stahl should have been paid, let's just, for rough numbers, $10,000 in wages that he didn't get paid. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, if he has to sue us to get that money, that $10,000, and he is able to prove that he was entitled to $10,000 under the Fair Labor Standards Act, that is nothing else appearing, that sum is doubled by the court. And then the court then turns to his attorney and says, how much time do you have in this case? How much do you get paid by the hour? And then there's an attorney's fee award as well. So instead of $10,000, it would be $20,000 plus his reasonable attorney's fees.
And that'd be paid by the county in that scenario.
Correct.
Another question, and I'll be quiet. If we do not vote unanimously, we can't answer immediately. What was it? We couldn't discuss something there a while ago.
Well, I think this board can discuss, but I think the board does need to understand that under the terms of the agreement, both parties have agreed, in effect, that this is going to be an amicable settlement, and they don't intend to disparage the other party. In other words, it's water over the dam, and we've resolved it.
Refer it back to you or Mr. Rowland. Y'all will.
I think Mr. Rowland can take those requests, and if he needs additional information, he's certainly able to call me.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
I think it is important to add, Chester, that when we were, as you mentioned, we discussed this with a personnel specialist. Attorney's fees in these cases are by no means
they're not small,
that are negligible, and the personnel attorney advised us that a good number to look at, a starting place for, would be around $30,000.
I believe that's correct.
If no more questions, Mr. Chairman, before I make a motion, I'd like to say how the sheriff has handled this admirably and professionally through his office. Chester said the minute that we knew about this, it's been handled professionally, and you can tell by that. But these gentlemen are sitting right back here, and we appreciate them being here tonight more than you know. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we do put this moment in time behind us, and I make a motion we approve the settlement as presented by attorney, and I also in that motion we appreciate our attorney and his work too.
Thank you.
Pay for it.
We take it out of the general fund.
Yeah, we are going to need a budget amendment to accomplish that.
And with the budget amendment to accompany that.
I second.
Another second. Discussion. I have a couple things I'd like to say. Anybody else? Go ahead, Carl.
I think it's worthy to note that getting to this point is not without a lot of effort, and those efforts of everybody involved, Mr. Attorney, Mr. Manager, Mr. Sheriff, those need to be recognized and understand that sometimes you come together and work for what's for the betterment of the citizens of Macon County, and hopefully this decision will be viewed as that. And I think it's also appropriate to say thank you to the all officers for what they do for the citizens of Macon County. Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Paul? Sheriff, I'd just like to say I've spoken with you a couple times about this, primarily learning about it in our sessions we've been having. We've been discussing this and going through this entire process, and I can't animate enough how professional you've been, and how, as the chairman of this Board of Commissioners and on behalf of the county, for handling this promptly, bringing it to our attention, and helping us move through this in an amicable fashion. I just want to thank you for that. Again, I think, as Chester just said, we look forward as a county to moving past this and getting back to our normal day of business.
I do think it needs to be observed that what the county has done here is essentially said, we made a mistake, and we're trying to do the right thing and make it right. There's some payments that should have been made for this at-home canine care, and we're catching it up.
Right. Now, just from my understanding, I believe that this started, this potential mistake that we were making with this payroll, which I wouldn't have known about anyway, well before you even became sheriff, would be my guess. And that whenever you did find out about it, you handled it promptly and quickly with us and professionally. As chairman, I just want to say thank you for that.
I believe I got a call from him the very same day, and I think he pretty much insisted we sit down that day, if I'm not mistaken.
He's not only worked through this problem with us on this, but he's also corrected the issue in the board so that the other gentlemen are being taken care of appropriately.
I'd like to just say two things before you vote. The first thing I'd like to say is it was no longer than 3 minutes after I was made aware that that this was going to be a claim. I was immediately on the phone with both Chester and with Derek. I mean, literally within 3 minutes. The second thing I'd like to say, since you recognized my officers and some of them with their families here tonight, they're not here paid. They weren't here at my request to be here tonight. And when I asked what they were doing, they were here to support me, and they were here to support each other and this unit. And I appreciate them being here tonight, and I appreciate everybody's efforts. And basically, I can't say a whole lot. So I'm going to just.
Well, I don't think that I see absolutely, and y'all talked to it, but I see absolutely zero intent from anybody that this was an intentional mistake. I don't think it's something that has.
And one comment, I appreciate what you guys do. You're employees of the county. You should absolutely be paid for the hours that you've earned. And I appreciate the way you guys are handling this, working through the sheriff, and I appreciate that team effort. That's all I can say about those things. Absolutely, you should be paid for the time you put into this. If this is a policy, you ought to be paid.
Don't know what we do without y'all. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? We'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Did we have a second? Did we have a second?
We had a second. Yes, we did. Commissioner Shields. Aye. All opposed? Aye. 4-1 vote, Mr. Bell. Before we adjourn, I don't think there's anything else on our agenda. I'd just like to remind y'all that I mentioned to you back in December that I'm planning on being out for the April meeting. I guess Commissioner Bill will be here, and I'll be watching the agenda closely. If we have anything that I feel like that I'm going to need to be here for, I will tap in wirelessly if that's feasible. Is it?
Not from where you're at.
Sheriff. I need the sheriff to sign it. Is he still out there?
All right.
We'll go off. We'll get in. We'll get all that set up.
He's in a meeting.
Well, one of the things that worried me was, can we still have a unanimous decision on that road name
We'll get the sheriff.
without me here?
Oh, yeah.
Jim?
Well, we can have a majority. Well, it's got to be unanimous.
Okay. Just want to make y'all aware of that. All right. Can we get a motion to adjourn? Take a motion.
Yes, sir.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, does anybody?
Jimmy, can I get your signature on these? We got two of them over here.
Now what?
Two originals.
Women Awareness Month.
You get similar emails.
I did. You said you did.